Hey guys, good morning. It's good to see you. Welcome, Terry. Good to have you on. First thing, as usual. Appreciate you. I hope you had a good week. I had a busy week. Oh, stress. I had stress. Yeah, I had stress. But it was okay. It's been a good weekend. Did some family stuff yesterday. Got to go out together, so it was fun. Rick Bowser, sir, good morning. Good to see you. Hope you guys are ready for some good stuff this morning. Let's see. Yeah. There we go. Y'all go ahead and tell me of any topics you want to get in today. I already have I have 3 ready to go, spooled up, but we can change anything we want to change. If you guys have something specific you want to do, please let me know about that. Rick, some of the topics this morning will perk your ears up, I think. I think so. Anything you guys have looked at this week, seen that's interesting, you just want to chat about while we're waiting? Chris G, good morning, sir. Good to have you. Trying to think if anything interesting happened this week. It was mostly a slog at work, that's for sure. Mostly a slog. Had some interesting submarine antics going on this week. That one caught me by surprise. Like, I wasn't even following that silly submarine story with the Titanic stuff, but someone told me about it and I was like, what? So dumb. Oh, goodness. You almost wonder if they made it sound as dumb as possible in an attempt to kind of make you feel stupid for believing it. Or they wanted to test how stupid the public is for believing what they told us. It's kind of funny. I'll put the topics I have so far on the screen for you guys. Take a look. You can decide if there's anything you want to add or change. You let me know. Stacia, good morning. It's good to have you. Can't believe it's June already. Oh my goodness. It's June. June already. I think this first couple topics are going to be amazing. The ancient giant trees, or the no trees on flat earth topic, that's a good one. I think a lot of people have seen a lot about, so we can talk through some of that. This topic of the Institute of Sexual Science, it's probably, we're not going to go into a lot of gross things there. This is just an interesting find that I stumbled upon as I was studying yesterday, researching, and I wanted to share this with you guys so you can see how I found out some of the things I found out about this interesting organization. Terry Barnes, you say you've been listening to Jack Cummings' Why I Don't Believe in the Rapture. He explains a lot about 70 AD destruction. Do I have an opinion on him? Terry Barnes, I don't think that I have heard of Jack Cummings yet, so I'll take a note down and maybe check into what he's got. Yeah, I haven't heard his stuff yet, so let's see here. I'll put that in my notes and just double check it. Yeah, it's hard actually for me to. I don't spend a lot of time anymore studying eschatology, but studying other people's versions of eschatology. I guess I think the reason is that I feel like I've just about heard it all. So um, and unless it's something different than I've heard before, it doesn't always pique my interest. But I can check into Jack Cummings and see what he's doing. Just get a little flavor for what he's teaching right now. Yeah, Squiffy Bear, good morning to you. I just saw you on there. Sorry, I was blabbing a little bit. It's good to have you this morning. Hope you're doing well. I hope your hubby's doing well too. Terry, say I've put you on a curious rabbit hole. I guess I tend to do that. What rabbit hole is it specifically? Does it have to do with the Jack Cummings information, the 70 AD? I'm curious now as to which rabbit hole, which of the 1,001 rabbit holes are you following? That's how it is. That's a good seltzer water. Man, yummy. All right. I won't belabor it too long. We can get going pretty quick here this morning if we want. Rick, you asked me, what did I hear about the submarine? You said a Stu Peters piece said it was to restrict travel to the Titanic. Yeah, Rick, that's an interesting conclusion that I just kind of stumbled upon this morning too. That some people are saying because the report came out that they knew that they knew this submarine, if it's even real, that it was destroyed on last Sunday. So it's been, apparently, according to them, it's been destroyed all week. And all the drama they've been spilling out day after day has just been for show. Because the military knew it was gone on Sunday. So, yeah, Rick, it sounds kind of like, from what I've heard, like you said, Stu Peters talked about maybe, that perhaps they're trying to cause or bring this event into the public eye because it's a danger for people to go down there, so that they're going to then try to do some kind of international agreement that will prevent people from going down there, and then they can use the force of military to stop people from checking out the Titanic wreckage, especially since there's, again, so much renewed interest in the Titanic and what really happened with its sinking. And you guys probably are aware of most of that, but I don't want to go into a ton of detail on that right now. But it was seemingly an intentional sinking for specific reasons by globalist bankers who were trying to install the Fed into the United States. So just as a brief summary. What else you guys saying? Pittsburgh Joe, welcome this morning. It's good to have you. You say, does the Greek word for advocate, which I can't probably pronounce right just by seeing the Greek there, calculate to 616 because people worship the dead advocate Jesus to replace themselves on their own cross? It's an interesting question. Is there a specific verse, Pittsburgh Joe, that you feel it references that? I mean, I can look that word up. I can find it probably. That's an interesting topic there. Pittsburgh Joe. Greek word for advocate. Yeah, I'm gonna do a quick little search right while we're waiting, getting ready here. Advocate or intercessor, a console or comforter, helper. Oh, it's paraclete. Okay, yeah, from the word that's used to describe the Holy Spirit. That's interesting. Of course, it does mean helper. So I'm just, as a brief, I'm looking at that, Pittsburgh Joe. And you say 1 John 2:1. Yeah, it looks like it's used a few different places. There's 1 John. 1 John 2:1. My father, or my little children, these things I write to you, ye sin not. If any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. And again, that word advocate there, you know, I would say, here you can see from the translations, try and make it big enough for you guys to see. On the right-hand side over here where I'm highlighting, there's a few different times that word's used, almost always called the Comforter for the Holy Spirit, in reference to the Holy Spirit. But then in this one passage, 1 John 2:1, they call it Advocate. So I am curious as to why in the one spot they chose to translate to the word advocate instead of helper. Very interesting. From the word origin based on the word parakleo, which is another strong, so we can go there. And the word parakleo means send or summon or invite, beg, admonish, comfort, or encourage. Interesting. So this is the way I would try to answer your question. It looks like this word is very often translated comforter or helper. And see, it's imploring, helping, beseeching. So I just would really kind of lean more heavily towards the encourager, helper type of translation on that word than the other intercessor, because we know other places the word intercessor is used, but it's not translated advocate. It's not translated from that word. It's a different word in Greek. So although Jesus is, of course, our advocate, so I don't have a problem with that necessarily. So we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. He's definitely our helper. He is an advocate. In Hebrews, it says he's our priest, our high priest. So all those things really apply, Pittsburgh Joe. I think I would agree with all those things. But then to your statement of people worshiping the dead advocate to replace themselves on their own cross, I don't really understand what you mean by that. I don't think I really understand that question. Jesus is not dead. He's alive. And so I don't understand also replacing ourselves on our own cross kind of statement. To me, I don't understand that. So if you want to add some flavor, Pittsburgh Joe, at all, or if that helps you, let me know in the comments, and I'll probably take it on next week. You say people think they can continue in sin even though he's our advocate. Yeah, that's probably true for some people, but yeah, I don't know how we would expect Christ to advocate for us in front of the Father if we're going on sinning, right? It's you can understand how we would grieve the Holy Spirit in that way for sinning constantly, but we're asking him to advocate for us. It doesn't work. It won't work. He won't do it. Can't do it. He can't advocate for that, right? So I think that might be the point there. All right. If you put anything else, Pittsburgh Joe, I'll check back and make sure. But let's talk about our topics this week. Let's see if there's anything else you guys put on here. Yeah, I think someone mentioned the submarine again. Yeah. We're good on that. The link between, Stacia, you said the link between baseball and the Masonic compass and square being interesting. That is interesting. I don't know about that. So let me take that down as a note for myself. To talk about possibly next time, or look for it. All right. So guys, I think we do have some good topics on the board. Pittsburgh Joe, I'm going to pop yours down. We kind of talked about it a little bit. So Verum Venemus had asked last week about the ancient giant trees, and we can talk about that. I have this topic I'm bringing called the Institute of Sexual Science, and again, it's not necessarily going to be about sexuality or anything like that, but the interesting origins of that group and where it came from and when it existed, to give us some hints and clues about our history. Okay, that's what it's about. Right along y'all's kind of thread there about J.P. Morgan and all that stuff. And then Northbound Believer had this discussion question last week about, should Messianic Jews follow the Torah? So we're going to talk through that a little bit. And I give you my opinion on what I see in the scriptures about that. All right, so if there's no other things, let's do quick announcements before we get started. I don't have many website updates this week. My work has been really heavy, and so it's wearing me out, and I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, I didn't make many updates this week to the website or the application. Those are still available for you guys to use at your leisure. I always am available for speaking engagements. I did a few of those this week, just one-on-ones with people that wanted to talk about some things and, you know, ask some questions or bad ideas around. I'm fine with that. Testimonials, all that kind of stuff I'm available for. Just contact me on my website if you would want to reach out in any way, and I'll figure out when we can do something. And then my next video that's in progress right now, again, it's still the Whore of Babylon, Mystery Babylon. I did some more research on this week, and yeah, I think I'm gonna get it done this coming week. I think I will be finished with it. I'll have the time and I'll get it done. So that'll be coming out this week, so be aware. And then if you guys have any prayer requests that you want to talk about, now we had some prayer requests last week and the prior, but in effort to keep y'all's privacy, what I can, to the best of my ability to protect that, I'm not going to keep a running list of prayer requests every week. So if there's things this week you want us to pray about, I would encourage you, as we put things and pray for them each week, that you put those on your list and you keep up with that and pray for the people on the stream. That we're essentially a family now. We join from all over the world, and we're here every week, and we know each other. We know about each other. So I would say, if we are important to you, then take down the prayer requests and pray for them through the week. So anybody with any prayer requests that we need to talk about or pray for this week, I'll give you just a couple minutes to get those on there. And then I will say a short prayer. And Joe, Pittsburgh Joe, I did get your comments there, and I'm taking those into my notes. And I may do some more thinking about that this week. Thank you for asking about that stuff. All right. So I'm not hearing any more prayer requests, so I'm going to go ahead and say a quick prayer if you guys wouldn't mind. You can bow with me where you are, and let me pray. Lord God, I do thank you for this time. I thank you for the people on the live stream. Each one you've brought here for a reason, including myself. I'm here for a reason. Help us to have good conversation. Help me to deliver good information that people can take and do research with and study and learn. That's the whole point here. We want to get closer to you, God. I pray for those on the call or that have been on prior week calls that are struggling with either sicknesses or oppression from spiritual forces. Lord, please be with them. Please protect our group, our family of people here. This is a gathering just like it has been from the beginning since your son came. This is a church, Lord, and I thank you so much for it. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and get started. First topic is the giant trees. I love it. No more trees on flat Earth. So I think you guys have heard about this, have you not? Who has heard about this? That's what I want to know. You know, I think I first heard about this topic. It may have been almost 10 years ago now. May have almost been 10 years ago now. So let me get some information up here. There is this video on YouTube that that is the first thing I saw, right? I heard someone talking about it in a chat, and I think it was actually in a chat about flat earth topics that I saw someone mention this video. And let me don't really want to play the video, but I'm going to pop through it. If you've seen this, the name of the video was called No Trees on Flat Earth. This is the first video that I ever saw on this topic. Again, this one is a copy, and it was from 5 years ago, but you know, I think this actually was done, if I'm not mistaken, by a Russian or a guy who speaks in Cyrillic. And so this is a translation of the original. So yeah, this came out years and years ago. And you can see as they go through, there's tons of information. It's a long video, hour and a half. And so it's just a lot. And of course, they're going to hammer me with ads while we're trying to do this. But, you know, all these different things about, you know, trees and mesas and everything. So we're going to talk about all this. So I don't want to belabor this video, but just so you know, this is, as far as I know, the primary source for this idea. I don't know of any other that's older. Okay. So if you're interested in that, I can post this link on the video description today. Now, in regards to this, I think there's a lot of things we can look at. And of course, there's tons of evidence that people give for this idea that they're, so the idea, just to summarize in brief, in case any of you don't know, the idea is that, of course, the person who made this original video agrees that the earth is flat, in their opinion, in their viewpoint. And then when they started apparently looking around the earth and seeing different mesas, large mesa structures, for instance, this one in Monument Valley, Utah, that they said, this looks to me like a tree stump. Okay, when they started making comparisons, and apparently that idea grew. They made a whole video about it. That's where everyone gets this idea from. So, you know, there's lots of things that can be said. These comparison pictures right here, let me see, I'm gonna go do it this way. It's a little bigger. Like this one in Australia, someone shows a tree stump on the left. They show a mesa on the right from Australia that's very flat and looks very similar in size and shape. Then there's you know, another one in Ethiopia. There's a very flat mesa that is raised, and just the shape seems to lend itself to the idea of a stump like the one in the picture, right? Okay, so there's quite a few of those, you know, and then people will talk about things like I was showing you in Monument Valley, things like that. And look, like in this picture, they'll say, look, there's 3 tree stumps, right? Different trees that are growing or grew and then somehow were cut down. They just don't exist anymore. They were knocked down. And these are the petrified remains of these giant trees, giant tree stumps. So they'll do things like this, and show all these pictures like this, assuming that there is some relationship between a tree stump like the ones in our backyard and the mesas out in, you know, Western America and other places around the world. So then in Colorado, there's more of that. You know, this is all over the place. You know, things like this, people think that looks tree-like in a way, all these different things. So there's more pictures. And then, of course, there's the giant redwoods in California that they will lump into this discussion, right? So the giant redwoods like this, we get pictures where these massive trees are being cut down. Let me try to get a better shot of that. Yeah, there. These massive trees being cut down in the late 1800s, early 1900s in California, right? So these are definitely giant trees, for real. These are massive trees that these loggers actually did cut down. Not the size of mesas, but large trees, right? Very large. Here's one. Man, that's a big tree. So yeah, there's tons of this kind of information online, people saying this stuff. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, here's one of the best looking ones. This one looks the most to me like a tree of all of them. And this is the what's this called? The Table of Jugurtha, and it's in Tunisia, right here. It's just a flat top mesa that they call the Table of Jugurtha, and it's in Tunisia. It looks very, it could be said it looks tree-like because there's rings on it. And of course, when we cut down trees, we see rings inside. So people say, you know, this is evidence. This is a petrified giant tree stump in Tunisia. So there's that kind of a thing. And then what else we got? Then there's some interesting discussion shifts in this thing that go back and forth between different things that they say all relate to the trees, right? These giant trees, or the idea of these giant trees. So another one is Devil's Tower, right? And this is, of course, where Close Encounters of the Third Kind was filmed at the end of that movie. I do have a video on my Sci-Cry channel about this specific movie, if you're interested. It's totally different topic, but I think it's called Close Encounters of the Kind. I think that's what it's called, but it's on my Sci-Cry channels on BitChute and Rumble. But there's the Devil's Tower, and of course, you could say it does look tree-like because it kind of is wide at the bottom, tapers towards the top. It's chopped off looking, and it has these striations in the Devil's Tower, the striations that go straight up and down based on the form of the rock. So, you know, it's easy to see why someone might say that looks like a giant tree that's been cut down, right? That does make sense to say that. And there you go. From above, it's an impressive structure of stone, no matter what. I shouldn't say structure. It's an impressive outcropping, a mountain, whatever you want to call it, mesa. So yeah, that's impressive. Now there's lots of other places. Now the thing about Devil's Tower, you know, other than that it is a flat-topped mesa structure, is that these striations, if you look at them very closely, they're hexagonal in structure. And there's lots of other places that we see that in the world, different places. And this one is called Giant's Causeway. And it is in Ireland. And so you see here, there are lots of these hexagonal rock structures at this place, Giant's Causeway in Ireland. It's a beautiful place. It's beautiful. So there you can see those hexagonal kind of structures in the rock. Now, to me, you know, this is interesting to me. It feels like a sort of different topic. Like, why would these structures appear in the rock formation hexagonally? Because, for instance, this doesn't look like a giant tree here. But this is another one of the topics that is very... oops. There we go. Yeah, very seriously considered as part of this idea that there are these giant trees all over the earth that were chopped down. And so anyway, that's Giant's Causeway. It's a really cool place. Really cool. Then another one called Litlafoss Waterfall in Iceland. I don't know if you've heard of this one. It's the same type of thing. You see these hexagonal rock structure formations all over this place, but it's a beautiful area. This is the waterfall. Now what you're going to see, you can see the striations in all the rock around here. You see some going up and down, some going a little diagonally over there towards the right hand side. And so you can see where all this comes from, but the picture I'm about to show you is from the top of this waterfall. It's just absolutely beautiful. So like this, you can see that photo. That's the top of that waterfall, and then to the left there is where it's spilling out the side of that mountain. Absolutely fantastic place. I would love to visit this sometime. Yeah, so I think that's about it. But yeah, those pictures are just incredible. So beautiful. Anyway, can we go? You want to? Let's schedule a trip, a big group trip. Let's do it. Los Órganos rocky beaches in the Canary Islands. I thought I had pictures of this, but I don't. Let me see if I can get some real quick. Come on. Because it's the same type of thing. You can see here. It's the same type of structures. These strange striations in the rock formations. Very clear to see there. Then I'm just going through all the ones I found. Staffa Island in Scotland. It's very similar. You see all these striations. Looks like hexagonal structure in the rock. And this is that island from above. It's actually not round. It's a very oblong, funky shape. I mean, overall, the island itself. But you can see the underlying rock has those striations in it. It's very cool. Staffa Island in Scotland. Yeah. Very cool. Just like Giant's Causeway, really. All right, so then we have Salar de Uyuni. This one is mentioned in the video, No More Trees on Flat Earth. This is the salt flats of Salar de Uyuni. I can't remember, I didn't put what country that's in. But you can see the way, ignore the reflection that you're seeing, but you can see on the bottom there that, you know, the people talking about these salt flats say that's a hexagonal structure in the salt that forms, which you can see here it's not really completely hexagonal, but it could be that way in some cases. There's a couple pictures I think here that seem a little more, you know, uniform, but again, these are not necessarily hexagons, but they do seem to kind of form that same type of structure. So yeah. That's the thing there about some areas of the salt flats there don't have that, but others do. So anyway, that's all stuff that's actually talked about in that video. Now, let me go back to my notes here. That has a way I was going to follow this. Original video, yeah, we talked about that, the pictures, and then there's these categories we went through: comparisons, hexagonal structures. Oh, cities on the tree stumps. Yes. There's actually a few places in the world where cities are built on top of what people consider to be these giant tree stumps. It's very interesting. So I'll put that on the screen for you. Like this one. It's very interesting. Calicata Vecchia in, I think, Italy is where this is. It's an amazing place. You see that? So it's this amazing kind of mesa-like structure where they have built a literal city on top of it. And you can see it's built right up to the edge. Right up to the edge. If any more, if any rocks fell off the side of this, you might lose a house, it looks like. It's hard. There you go. It's a little bigger. Do you see that? I guess you see that. It's really amazing. Really amazing. Yeah. So that's cool. Anyway, you can't not look at that. It's so cool. So then there's another one. Thought I saw. Oh yeah, this rock fortress in Sri Lanka. It's called Sigiriya Rock Fortress in Sri Lanka. You can see it's an entire fortress built on top of a rock formation, mesa, just like we talked about right there. Pretty amazing. There's actually more interesting stuff about this fortress. If we go here, I can show you. There's all these cool frescoes inside a cave in this fortress. And the gate to this fortress is broken down now, but it used to be a huge lion's head with paws that you walked up underneath. So cool. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, that's the Sri Lankan fortress of Sigiriya. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so there's that. Now, after all that, seeing all that, how convinced are you? That's my question. Let me see if there's any comments you guys have so far. I don't think you've been commenting much on this. Probably just watching along as I show you these things here. I see you guys making some comments. Lindsay Ball, you said there's a dude who debunked the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he has a video on the video, no trees on flat Earth. Yeah, okay, interesting. If you find the name of that guy or the name of the video, tell me and I'll check it out for sure. Okay, now I hate to say it, guys, but I'm gonna go. You got to say with me now. Close your eyes and be calm and say to yourself, no matter what Bible Scribe says, I'm not going to get mad at this guy. Really like Bible Scribe. I'm not going to get mad at Bible Scribe. So I have a new section now on this where it's going to be my section of skepticism on this topic. Okay. There's a lot of things that we can talk about in regards to these comparisons that are being made, the idea in general. I better get a little sip of water here. Okay. It's going to be important. I mean, I just feel like it's important to be very critical. It's important to really identify evidence versus speculation versus, good comparisons, good research. So that's where I come in on this. I do have some skepticisms about this video, about this idea, and that's what we'll talk about now. So one of the things is the size of these trees. Now we need to think about how big these are. Like let's see if I can do this in the best way possible. Let's do this. Let's do this. So the size, trying to see. Yeah, that's not the one I want. Hold on. Okay, here, this will work. This will work just for an example. All right. So the size of these trees, if these are trees, we have to consider what relative size means for what we're seeing. Okay. So in the case of, for instance, this one right here. Okay. Do you see that? So that tree, literally, if we can imagine that tree starting from that root size, that base size, going straight up, how tall do you think it would be? That one, not any of the others. Okay, so this one right here, probably, I'm assuming, I don't know, judging based on what I can tell from this picture, I'm guessing that that is a 1/4 mile diameter. A 1/4 mile diameter. So this would probably be a 10-mile high tree if it was grown. If this is, we're really talking about trees here, right? Let's say that one's 10 miles high. Okay, then I would ask you then in the background here, what's this tree? How tall is that tree? 30 miles? It's at least 3 times the size of the one I just mentioned. 30 miles high? That's pretty high. Okay, so we have to be honest about the relative size of what we're talking about. And there's some mesas around the world that are miles wide. Are those trees? If they're miles wide stump bases, those trees had to be 20, 30, 40, 50, 150 miles high. If they are the size of the trees we have on Earth, if they're the same scale size, right? So consider that as you think through this topic. I'm not saying that that's any kind of evidence, but it's something that needs to be thought about if we're going to consider this idea as a possibility. Now, the next thing is the size of the cutter. So let's go this way at this now. Let's talk about, where's a good one? Well, yeah, that was a good one, but we'll just do this picture for now. So if these trees were cut down and lopped off, how big is the person that cut them down? How big is the machinery that they used to do it, if they use machinery, or the saw that they used to do it with? And these here, while they look like they are probably in the realm of 1/8 of a mile wide, these are some of the smaller ones. So how big is the person or giant or whatever it is supposedly cutting these things down in our ancient past? So I was talking with someone this week about the giants and what the book of Enoch says about the size of the original giants, not the later on giants, but the original giants were said to be 3,000 ells or cubits high. 3,000 cubits high, if that's even the real correct interpretation of that passage. 3,000 cubits high is around 0.8 of a mile high. That's the tallest record that we have that could possibly be a record of the original giants, the Nephilim, that came from angels mating with humans. Now, I'm not saying I 100% believe that height as a correct interpretation from that one passage in Enoch, but let's just use it as a benchmark. That's not that person, that giant, if they're truly a mile tall, would be 4 times as tall as this stump. And the idea that that creature cut this giant tree off is, I guess it's plausible. I guess it's plausible that that creature could have cut this giant tree down. Although that is a very large tree for that kind of a creature. Okay, so you can see how I'm trying to fit the puzzle pieces, play with the ideas in a way that makes sense. But then my other question would be, if that's, let's say that's true, let's pretend the giant that was 3,000 cubits high cut all these trees down, or a bunch of them did. Where are their saws? Where are their axes? Where are their materials with which they used to do this work? Where's the machinery that they used to cut these trees down? It seems problematic that there's no other record of that group of beings that cut down trees all over the world according to this theory. Okay? All over the world, by the way. According to the video and the theory, all these mesas are trees. They're all trees. And there's forests and forests. And so the number of people, even giants that size, that it would have taken to clear the world, to clear the earth of these giant trees, is staggering. You'd have to have a staggering number of them. And you'd have the tools with which they cut these trees, they would be preserved and scattered and buried all over the world. We would have the tools. We would supposedly have artifacts from their civilization. Where are the artifacts from their civilization? Where are the houses of the giants that cut all the trees down? Where? I ask you. All right. So the next one is the height of stumps. So these are supposedly all stumps of giant trees, right? So let me find a picture that helps us discuss that. Let's see here. Wait, I got it. Grand Canyon. That'll help us. Yeah, this will be good. Okay, yeah. This is a good one. All right. So, no, that's not the one. Oh, yeah. Here we go. So, now this is a picture of a portion of the Grand Canyon. Now, assuming that the mesas are all stumps, is it ever funny to anyone that they all are cut off in a general vicinity? They're all exactly the same height, okay? And I can show you other pictures that show that, not just that one, because that one, these, you know, some people may not say those were stumps. These are not stumps, even though all the rest are. So we will go to some of these again. Let's see here. Yeah. So here, in one general vicinity, all of these, quote, stumps are the same height. So as someone telling me that a creature or some giant race or whatever cut all the trees off to the exact same height, like within inches or feet of one another, especially when it's such a large creature, that level of accuracy, if that was an intended accuracy, is ridiculously high. So here's some other pictures of stump fields from modern day. Like when we go and we cut off trees, are these all the same height? No. They're all different heights. Here's another one. Even this one, which I thought, well, these are pretty close, but no, they're really all different heights. Even with some change in the surrounding, the ground elevation, the ones in the mesas are all exactly the same height, no matter of the underlying elevation below it. So, assuming that someone cut all the giant trees down, how can they all be completely at the same height and same level as far as you can look when you're at a place? Like here's another one. Oh, look, they all rise to the exact same height. Amazing. The tree cutter must have been very accurate. Okay, so there's that discussion topic. Then here's another one. The proximity of the stumps to one another. So let's find a good one. I mean, in these, it can be discussed. For instance, if these three mesas are stumps, then they are still, if you imagine these being real trees, they are very close together. Very close together. And the question you would ask is, why would these three trees, this large, be so close together? And the other question I could ask in this photo is, how come there's no other trees for miles? Why is there three trees out in the middle of nowhere? There's no forest, there's three trees, they're really close together. Very strange. So there's other pictures that speak to this. Let's go back to Colorado. Look here. Is this a good one? Yeah, this is a pretty good one. So what you can see here is if these were tree stumps, you know, because this one right here, this looks like one of our stumps, right? If any of these others are stumps, these trees are right on top of each other. How can they grow like that? How can these supposed giant trees grow on top of each other? Normal trees don't grow like that. If one grows up and starts to try to grow up next to another one, whichever one started growing first wins out and the other one just withers and dies. It doesn't grow massive like this. So these formations are not in the same format, proximity-wise, as normal trees. So again, it's lending itself to the possible evidence that the reality that these cannot be trees. In many ways, when we test different properties of real trees, they don't match up. And again, this picture shows they're all apparently, these trees, if they are, lopped off at the exact same height. Why is that? And we're going to talk about why that is in just a minute. But so we've been going through these different pictures of the mesas and the stuff in Arizona, Colorado, Utah, all these places. I could go all over the world. I don't want to waste the time with that. But I think that the important thing here is to think about, for instance, when we talk about the Grand Canyon, for instance, we got all these beautiful areas where, again, the people who believe in the trees, the giant trees, would say, yeah, this is part of the forest somehow. Again, everything is leveled off at the same level. And so you have to ask yourself, you see a picture like this, did this river possibly carve out these formations from this rock? What happened in the past that could have carved out this formation from these rocks? Of course, it's Noah's flood. Of course. And so before Noah's flood, the Grand Canyon looked like this. It was flat. It was massively flat. The Grand Canyon, it was a flat plain before the flood. And then when the flood came, why would it do this? You may ask yourself, why would it do this? For one, there was a tremendous amount of water. Tremendous. From above, from below, water was coming out all over the place. And there are parts of the world where this kind of thing happened. And the reason is because the dirt is mixed types of dirt. When water rushes through a place like this, it removes the softer parts of the dirt and leaves the heavier parts. The more dense areas of dirt or rock don't get washed away, whereas the softer dirt does get washed away. And of course, during something as cataclysmic as the flood, you would have different currents moving, different directions, all sorts of stuff happening that wasn't, obviously natural for the land where it was happening. Everything you're seeing in this picture here was hundreds of feet underwater. It was a lake at the time of the flood of Noah. And then as the waters receded, they had to go somewhere. So if God opened again the fountains of the deep to then receive the waters back, then there would have been these runoff areas all over the world. And as it just destroyed the sediment, pulled the sediment away from these different rockier sections of dirt, you would get this type of thing. And this is a combination, not just of the waters receding from the flood, but it's a combination of that plus, in the case of like what you're looking at right here, this is also then after the waters recede, then time goes by where erosion occurs and some of the rock and some of the dirt and sediment on top of these rocks gets blown down to the sides, or rain falls and it runs down and it washes stuff out more. And so, of course, you get interesting striations, different patterns in the rock and in the soil. And some of the things like we saw in the Litlanfoss in Iceland, Litlanfoss waterfall in Iceland. This picture right here. So as you can see, these formations of rock, this picture right here proves these hexagonal formations in rock. It proves these hexagonal formations in the rock are not tree striations, and they're not anything other than the way this rock formed, and it could have been volcanic. It could have been volcanic. Because here's what you see. You see these going straight up and down. You see these over here, some of them curving, some of them going up like this, some of them going in different directions, even against each other. This more feels like at one time this whatever this material is was in more of a malleable state, either lava or some kind of flow like that, and it formed in this and stuck and it froze. I mean, I can't. Or you believe that this is the root base of a giant tree that is miles wide and hundreds of miles tall, because this whole area in Littlenfoss is covered with those striations. It's not 100 trees growing on top of each other. It's just not. And so, I really have a problem with this theory. I really have a problem with it. I think the better explanation is just that the flood occurred and it eroded, and that's why everything is at this level plane at the top. All of these so-called tree stumps are at the same level. They're all at the same level because that used to be the sediment level, and as the flood came, it washed out stuff in between different areas. Some still stand, others don't. And that's why also in the picture I showed you earlier, no trees. This picture right here. That's why there is, quote, 3 trees and no others around for miles, because the floodwaters washed this whole area out for miles and miles and miles. It washed everything out, but there were some areas that had rock, and those weren't washed out by the flood. They stood, and then, of course, at the base, the reason it tapers out is because there was sediment that washed down. This stood still in the floodwaters, and then over time, sediment increased. It built up on its sides because it's there. This is what happens if you stick your foot in the sand and underneath a river, and then stuff builds up around your foot, right? But this is not the foot of anything. It's not the foot of a tree. This is simply rock formation that used to be buried under hundreds of feet of earth. This whole area was a plain, a plateau that was flat, and then the floodwaters of Noah's flood washed it out. So I see you guys, I think Pittsburgh Joe, you're posting a bunch of things to suggest that there were giant trees in the scriptures. So if you want, I can go through some of those scriptures. I do have a few that I looked at in regards to this that people use. I thought I did. Oh, I think I put them on this page itself. So yeah, let's do this. Here's some scriptures people use to suggest this. So Isaiah 10:34 in the New American Standard says, "He will cut down the thickets of the forest with an iron axe, and Lebanon will fall by the mighty one." So if you are suggesting that Lebanon's thick forests were these giant trees, then you're saying that right up until about the time of Christ, there existed these giant forests, and that somehow we have no record of that in any of our history books, none of them, and that they were able to essentially deliver the cedars of Lebanon to the cities in the Middle East, because that's recorded, that they delivered the cedars of Lebanon on ships to places like Babylon in Palestine and in that area before Christ. We have records of that. So do you think that they loaded up these giant trees on ships and took them to the merchants in Palestine overseas? I don't think that happened. There's no record of that anywhere. Then in Ezekiel chapter 31, let me just do that in this so I can get there. Ezekiel 31. Came to pass in the 11th year, the 3rd month, first day, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, and this is the Debar Yahweh, I believe this is Christ, saying to Ezekiel, Son of man, speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches, a shadowing shroud, and of his high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. Okay, it's a tall tree. I don't know what. The waters made him great. The deep set him set him up on high, with her rivers running around his plants. It's talking about the Assyrian. It's not talking about the tree. Little rivers unto all the trees of the field. This is not saying giant trees. I don't know what to say. It says, therefore, his height, whose, the Assyrians, was exalted above all the trees of the field, and his boughs were multiplied, his branches became long because of the multitude of waters when he shot forth. Now, the Assyrian being a cedar in Lebanon is fine. The cedars of Lebanon were well known because it was such a beautiful tree, such good wood for building things. And they delivered these trees all over the known world. Do you think they cut down giant trees and delivered them all over the known world on ships? Because that's how they delivered things like this. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Solomon used some of the cedars of Lebanon in the construction of his temple, right? Were those giant trees that were a quarter-mile wide? I don't think so. I mean, I'm not trying to, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I just am not on board with this concept. I'm not on board with this storyline at all. And I evaluated it a lot in the beginning. I will say the first time I watched that video, No More Trees on Flat Earth, I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. Then I started digging, and I came to some of these conclusions. That, again, how many times have I mentioned on this channel, like, we have to be careful that we don't take ideas that have no basis in any historical record and then just use as our justification that, well, it's been hidden from us, or they destroyed that history, or, but then we do some practical research on trees and the way those formations are, and they don't match. And I don't know how to get around that stuff. You can't have two half-mile wide tree stumps sitting right next to each other within 100 yards of each other. You see that all over the place, all over the world. That big of a tree could not grow right next to another tree that big. Trees don't work like that. Trees don't work that way. Yeah, the cedars from Lebanon, they're all over the Bible, but I just don't agree that those were some kind of giant tree. They were tall trees. I mean, you could say they were like the giant sequoias, but even the giant sequoia trees in California are too big to transport by boat. Not the boats they had then. They didn't have massive boats like that could transport a tree that size. They didn't have them. I'm assuming that the massive cedars, or the trees of Lebanon, cedars of Lebanon, were simply beautiful trees with beautiful wood that were coveted around the world, as it says in all the writings of the ancient world, not just the Bible, all over the place. So I don't know. that's my opinion based on the evidence that's given. And the evidence that's given is these are tree stumps. And they are because I say so, and they look like tree stumps to me. That's the evidence that's given. So I don't find good basis for it in my research. I just don't find good basis. I'll put the link in the chat, and you guys can watch the video. Here's the link. I should have just put it in there before, but there's the link. Whoop. There you go. C. Jones, welcome. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you. Yeah, your comment that the trees of Lebanon could be the California redwoods. We have no evidence of that. I mean, who knows? Could be, I guess. How would we know? Like, I don't understand, guys. We literally have maps of the ancient world from the time of Christ, and they don't show America. They don't show America. They show where Lebanon was. They show where all these different countries were, and it's not America. It's the Middle East. So, all right. I think we will go on then, if it's all right with y'all. That is my treatise on the no more trees on flat earth. So I apologize if it goes against what you felt in the past. I encourage you, if you disagree with me, to, if you don't agree at all, then you don't agree, and you have to find the evidence for yourself. But based on my analysis, there's just no way those can be trees. No way at all. All right. Next topic is the Institute of Sexual Science. And actually, it's funny, Rick Bowser, this is the one I thought that you would really find interest in. And not for the reason, I hope I don't mean that in a bad way at all. Okay. This is an interesting one, guys, because I just stumbled upon this, and it's amazing. So as I was looking at some things, let me go here to my notes on that. Yeah. So there's another name for this, quote, Institute of Sexual Science, and it's the Institute für Sexualwissenschaft. I think I did that kind of German-like, because it's German, right? This is German. And I ran across this, sometimes I check occasionally. I do a search, and I look for banned media, like books or movies that are banned in countries. And I get a kick out of learning why different films or media or books are banned in other countries, or in our country, in any country. Because oftentimes a country will ban a piece of media for very weird reasons, and it's sometimes because it's the government not wanting a piece of media to be seen by their citizens, because they need to keep control over the minds of those citizens. So a lot of times I'll look into lists of banned films, lists of banned books, quote, what books were the Nazis burning, right? That's what I want to know. And actually, that's a very interesting study that's related to what we're going to talk about. So the interesting thing about, as I was going through this page yesterday, lists of banned films, trying to zoom it up, I was just jumping down through here and trying to remember. Let's see, I'll probably find it really easily again. Let's see, can I go? Well, it was this one. There we go. Yeah, in Germany. So from 1920 to 1945, this film, Anders als die Andern, different from the others is the translation of the title in English. And you see here, it was banned because of homosexual themes, right? So the film itself has homosexual themes in it. During the 1920s, the Weimar Republic, this is between the two world wars. So after the First World War, Germany had been spanked by the European nations, been spanked by England itself, and there were all these reparations forced on Germany that they had to then pay back. And so this is during the time between the two world wars where Germany was rebuilding. It's called the Weimar Republic. And they were banning films like this homosexual themed film called Different from the Others. Now, I had a hunch when I saw this film and what it was banned for because of some other things I know about this time frame in Germany. So I did a little digging as I saw that, and I did go to the page for the film itself to read a little bit about who made this film. Where did it come from? And the interesting thing is, as you can see here, Different from the Others is a silent German melodramatic film produced during the Weimar Republic. It was first released in 1919. When it stars these people, the story is co-written by Richard Oswald and Magnus Hirschfeld, who had a small part in the film also and partially funded it through what? His Institute for Sexual Science. This is where the topic name comes in, okay? Interesting. I thought to myself, because I know a little bit about the Weimar Republic, I've studied it a little bit. I had a hunch that this Institute for Sexual Science was a very corrupt organization. Of course, we from a Christian standpoint would know that any organization that funds a film on homosexuality is probably corrupt or, at least wrong and evil. So I dug into this. The Institute for Sexual Science. What is it? I was amazed. The Institute of Sexual Science, or Institut für Sexualwissenschaft, was an early private sexology research institute in Germany from 1919 to 1933. Okay, now follow with me. I know this seems like I'm going down a rabbit trail, but it has an interesting conclusion. The name is translated Institute of Sex Research or Sexology, or the Science of Sexuality. The institute was nonprofit, funded and situated in Berlin. It was the first sexology research center in the world, okay? Which is interesting because I've never heard of another one. The first sexology institute in the world. Interesting. It was created and established in Germany, right? Who established it? Well, it was headed by a man named Magnus Hirschfeld. Magnus Hirschfeld. Who is Magnus Hirschfeld? He is, according to Wikipedia, a German physician and sexologist. Interesting. So he's German. Why would a German do this kind of thing in the Weimar Republic, who was interested more in supporting its own country, nationalism, and in building German families? That is what the Weimar Republic was doing at this time. They encouraged traditional families with a husband and a wife. This was coming down from the top, meaning from the Socialist Party and from Hitler. They wanted the country to build itself and build strong families and, husband, wife, 2 kids. That was the thing they were all pushing for in the Weimar Republic. And that's why by the time of the Second World War, the Weimar Republic had kicked out all the Rothschild banks and had grown so powerful that England was again scared of it. In case you didn't know. But who is Magnus Hirschfeld? Is he really a German physician? Let's look down here at his early life. If anyone wants to go further than just the first 2 lines of the Wikipedia article and read, oh, Hirschfeld was born in Kolberg in Pomerania in an Ashkenazi Jewish family, son of a highly regarded physician and senior medical officer Hermann Hirschfeld. How interesting. An Ashkenazi Jew built the Institute for Sexuality, the first of its kind ever in history, in the Weimar Republic in Germany before the Second World War. This might be turning on some light bulbs for you. Might be, if you've never heard anything like this before. Very interesting, isn't it? So, a Jewish organization that was promoting deviant sexuality in Germany in the 1920s funded this film called Different from the Others. And what was the response of the government on this homosexual film? The government of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Socialist Party, they banned this film because it was homosexual. The gears may be turning in your head if you've never heard this stuff before. Let the gears turn. Think hard about this. Here's another interesting thing about this film. The story of this film was co-written by Magnus Hirschfeld, who we read about, started the Institute for Sexology in Germany, the Jew, and Richard Oswald. Who is Richard Oswald? Let's look at Richard Oswald. Richard Oswald, an Austrian film director, producer, screenwriter, and father of German-American film director Gerd Oswald. Interesting, Gerd Oswald, his son, directed movies in America. He directed these films: A Kiss Before Dying, Valerie, Crime of Passion, Brainwashed, Bunny O'Hare, and he worked in television with Perry Mason, Blue Light, Bonanza, Outer Limits, Star Trek. Interesting, Gerd Oswald is the son of Richard Oswald. Who is Richard Oswald really? Was he really an Austrian film director? Well, interestingly enough, if you scroll halfway down the page and look at this section called Exile, it says, being Jewish. Ah, he was Jewish. How come you didn't tell us, Wikipedia? Richard Oswald was not Austrian. He was Austrian born, but he's a Jew. And he was, quote, forced to flee Nazi Germany. And so he came to the United States and then had a son, and his son started making movies and television in America. Welcome to the state of modern Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. Is this not an amazing little trail? Is this not amazing? And you see how Wikipedia hides the information from you. They don't want you to know that these people that totally destroyed the moral fiber of Germany in the 1920s were Jewish. They were Jews. And the Jews set up organizations inside Germany to destroy that country from within. And so why do you think some of these government groups like the Socialist Party got so upset with the Jews? We're not talking about I'm not talking about what, quote, was done to the Jews. Let's not talk about that yet, okay? I'm just trying to give you a little perspective, if you don't already have this kind of perspective, on what was going on in Germany in this time frame. Very telling, very eye-opening. If we would read our history and not always trust the first line of text on a Wikipedia page, but maybe read through it, because they must reveal that these are Jews, Ashkenazi Jews. And I would bet that if I dug in further on Magnus Hirschfeld, I would find out a lot more scary stuff about what he and these other organizations did to Germany in the 1920s and 30s. So was that pretty cool? I just thought that was amazing that I just stumbled upon that and started finding this different stuff. And no, Mr. Hamilton, I did not watch that movie. No. But I've read stuff that said that the Jews were doing all sorts of things like this at this time. They were the ones in charge of all the brothels. They were the ones in charge of all the striptease clubs, all the deviant. They were doing transgender type stuff and transvestite shows and all sorts of plays. And it was all over Germany. Why do you think they were burning books in Germany? What books do you think they were burning? I've read a lot about that too. The media doesn't want you to know what books they were burning. They were burning books by people like this. They were burning films, getting rid of films and garbage like this out of their country. Why do you think England and all the powers connected to them, including the bankers, wanted to get rid of this country? They wanted to just destroy Germany, wipe it off the face of the earth as fast as they could. Why do you think? I'm just helping with some perspective. I think that this is an amazing little thread that helps people see, that helped me again see, which I'm familiar with, but helps you see the way this stuff is connected and what really might have happened during the world wars. Very scary stuff. Very scary stuff. All right. Whew. All right, let's move away from that topic before I get banned. Before I get banned. I'll get banned just like those films. Man, you won't be banned for homosexuality anymore, but you'll be banned for saying what I just said. Oh my goodness. I used a lot of time. All right, let's get on to our last topic for the day, guys. Oh, Mr. Hamilton, you ask, what was the first homosexual movie and who made it? I have no idea. I'm not sure I want to know, but I bet there was some kooky person out there who probably made one as soon as they started making movies. So when was the first movie made? I don't know. Squiffy Bear, you say the German people were really trying to drain the swamp. I would have to agree that was happening. That was part of it. Yes, I agree. You are very intuitive, Squiffy Bear. Very smart. Very smart. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's move on to our last topic. Should Jews, Messianic Jews, follow the Torah? And this is the topic from Northbound Believer from last time. And I'm not sure that she is on today, but that's okay. I'm sure she can catch up if she wants to. And so let's start here with some of the things in the New Testament speak to exactly this kind of thing. And so we have places in, for instance, the book of Acts, where Paul and the apostles were managing on one hand new Gentile Christians and on the other hand new Jewish Christians, and the Jewish Christians still not understanding this question fully. Should they be fulfilling the law? Do they need to continue the practices? And don't those new Christians over there, don't they need to do it too? Why wouldn't they need to do it? I mean, this is the Jewish religion, and this is the Jewish Messiah, right? So you can understand why they would be confused a bit. Not understanding fully. So let's go over here to, let's go to the Bible. And I'll put it back on the screen. So we'll go over to Acts, I think it was 12 is where I started. Oh no, 11. So we'll go to Acts 11. In verse 2, it says, when Peter was come to Jerusalem, they that were of the circumcision contended with him, saying, you went in to men uncircumcised and ate with them. But Peter rehearsed the matter from the beginning and expounded it by order unto them, saying, I was in the city of Joppa praying, and in a trance I saw a vision. A vessel descended. It had been a great sheet or plane let down from heaven by four corners, and it came even to me. Upon which I had fastened mine eyes and considered, I saw four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And I heard a voice saying, Arise, Peter, slay, and eat. And I said, Not so, Lord, for nothing common or unclean has at any time entered my mouth. Because he was a Jew, right? I mean, Peter was a Jewish man, so he did follow these things, right? But then he says he got this vision from God. And the voice answered him from heaven, saying, What God has cleansed, don't call it common. And this was done 3 times, and then all things were drawn up again into heaven. Behold, immediately there were 3 men already came to the house where I was sent from Caesarea unto me, and the Spirit bade me to go with them without doubting. And moreover, these 6 brothers accompanied me, and we entered the man's house, and he showed us how he had seen an angel, which stood and said to him, Send men to Joppa, etc. I think that might be about the end of that little vision and everything. But you can see how this vision spoke to him about the foods. He was saying to God, unclean foods, I don't want to eat those. That's not part, I don't want to do that. That's the Mosaic law. Don't eat unclean foods, right? That's Torah. But then God told him, what I've said is clean. It's all clean. It's all clean. And so this is God giving him a vision saying that, no, you don't have to. Pittsburgh Joe, that's a great verse, Acts 15:10, and we're actually we're gonna go to that one, I think, next. Yeah, 15. So let's go to that one real quick. But you're right on the money, Pittsburgh Joe. Yeah, certain men came from Judea that taught the brethren, saying, Except you be circumcised after the manner of Moses, Mosaic law, this is the Torah, you cannot be saved. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined Paul and Barnabas and certain others should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders about the question. And being brought on their way by the church, they passed through Phoenicia, Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles. Interesting. Again, for any Israel-only people out there, wow. The apostles declared the Gentiles were converted. They were saved. So yes, it's not Israel only, it's also to the Gentiles. They caused great joy in Phoenicia and Samaria. When they were come to Jerusalem, they were received of the church, and the apostles and the elders. But there rose up a sect of Pharisees which believed, saying, It was needful to circumcise them and command them to keep the law of Moses. This is exactly our topic, isn't it? These Jewish Christians wanted to force the law of Moses on other Christians, on Gentiles, who had, of course, they had no connection to the law. The apostles and elders came together after disputing. He said, Men and brethren, a good while ago God made choices among us that the Gentiles by my mouth would hear the word of the gospel and believe. Again, this whole passage, by the way, proves Israel only is a farce, okay? And God, which knows the hearts, bear witness, giving them the Holy Ghost, as he did to us, put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now, why do you tempt God to put a yoke on the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor us were able to bear? Right. It definitely talking about the Torah, because he says neither our fathers nor us were able to bear it. That's what he's talking about. This is the Torah. We weren't able to fulfill the law, so why do you put that yoke on our necks when now it is different? But we believe through the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ that we will be saved, even as our fathers were, who had to fulfill the law, but we don't. But we're going to be saved just as they were through Jesus Christ, right? So this passage is very clear about this whole topic. Now, I without having to go any further, I think that you can see what it's saying here, that Paul and Barnabas were saying. Pittsburgh Joe, you're going through everything I was going to go through if you'll just give me... I'm definitely going into Hebrews in just a second, so you're right on the target. But the thing about this passage is you must admit this is written in the first century before Christ came back in 70. So about 50 AD or so. Well, actually, Acts. I guess this stuff was happening just after his ascension. So 35 AD or so. So, I guess the reason I'm saying that is you might in your head say, well, that was before Christ came back, and maybe it's different now or something like that. But I just don't think that's the case. So what we're going to do then is talk about 70 AD just a little bit. So what do you think might have happened at 70 AD? This is part of, now before going into other passages about the law, which Deuteronomy, Hebrews is going to give us, what do you think happened in 70 AD? If you were a Jew and you saw the temple burnt before your eyes, burned down to the ground, and all the priests inside screaming and the blood coming out of the front of the temple, what would you think? Would you think maybe, wow, the hand of God just spoke heavily, and this stuff, the temple's over. It's over. Or would you think, wow, I hate God for destroying the temple. We're going to rebuild it. Would you say, I hate the Romans for destroying the temple. We're going to rebuild it. We got to have our sacrifices. We got to have it. I mean, to me, that's the Jew that is not understanding what's happening, right? The fact that it was up in flames. It was a very final judgment of the nation and the temple and the priesthood and everything else. So to get around that, I don't really know how you do. I don't know how you get around that from both a historical standpoint and in being in the shoes of a person at that time. You would have thought to yourself, holy moly, it is gone. It's gone. The temple, all the implements, all the sacrifices are over. It's over. And they would have known it. Like, I don't think they would be off in the woods doing sacrifices thinking that that was any kind of substitute for being in the temple at the altar. Do you? I just don't see it. So we can't assume, people now even saying, yeah, we're still supposed to follow the law. If there's Messianic Jews that say that, or I mean, there's Christians that say that, right? Why would that be? If we understand what happened in 70, what happened at that time? Because for one, people that, quote, follow the law now, follow the Mosaic law, the Torah, they don't follow all parts of it. It's not possible. The law had baked into it, into its fiber, it had the existence of the temple and the sacrifices in the temple and the priests in the temple. Without all that stuff happening, the law is null and void. Do you understand? I mean, you can't fulfill the law anymore. It's over. There's no fulfilling it. So do the people who still think that the law is in effect, do they split it in half and say, well, these parts of the law we can still do, so those are active, but the ones we can't do anymore, those aren't active anymore? What? Who does that? Like, at what point did God say it's okay to fulfill half my law? So the question, and that would be for non-Messianic Jews as well as anyone that still follows Torah. You can't follow the whole Torah, so why are you worried about the Torah? Why are you worried about the Mosaic law that was given to the Israelites? And then the Israelite nation was judged, the temple was flattened, the priesthood was murdered by God himself. I don't know how much more final you get. I mean, you can get a little more final by saying, oh, but the Jews fled from Jerusalem. Some of them made it out. But then they went to Masada and all the zealot Jews were killed and murdered and they committed suicide. It was just horrible. I don't know how you get around that. Do you say the law is in half now? There's half of the law we do need to fulfill and the other half not. But I don't know where in Scripture it says it's okay to fulfill half the law. Where in the Scriptures does it say that? It doesn't say that. It's either you fulfill the law or you don't. And the whole New Testament is talking about how you can't. You can't fulfill it. So there's different discussions. Of course, the Jews do feel like the law, the Mosaic law, the Torah is forever, right? They want to say that. They want it to be forever. One of the verses I saw in Deuteronomy, what they would use is say, these are the statutes and judgments which you will observe in the land which the Lord God thy fathers give you to possess all the days that you live upon the earth. Well, I would contend, and this word earth is land too. It's the same word here as here. I'm going to change it. It's land. So this is God speaking to the Israelites saying, as long as you're in the land, I want you to observe my laws that I'm giving you, the Mosaic law. So I would contend that after 70 AD, they're not in the land, man. It's over. And Christ came and said as much. So there are actually a lot of scholars, as I looked online, that say, no, the law was never intended to be forever. Of course, a lot of Protestant Christians believe that as well. But then there's even some Jews that know that, but most Jews, of course, modern Jews, want the law to be forever and contend it's forever. But the reality is that God has laws that are supersedent to the Mosaic laws. And his laws are simply his commands. Do this, don't do this, don't commit adultery. That's a law of God because it's a sin, not because it's in the Mosaic law. The Mosaic law was given to the Israeli people because they were weak. The law was said to have been given for their weakness. In the book of Hebrews, it says some things that you just can't get around in regards to this. Chapter 7 all the way through chapter 9. There's more. It goes on and on, but I just grabbed a few verses that I thought made the point. For the priesthood being changed, there is made a necessity of change of the law. There is verily a disannulling of the commandment going before the weakness and unprofitableness thereof. For the law made nothing perfect. But the bringing in of a better hope did. The better hope was Christ, by the which we draw nigh unto God. He's saying we draw nigh unto God because of the better hope, which is Jesus Christ. That's how we draw nigh unto God, not by fulfilling the law, because the law doesn't make anybody perfect. For if the first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no place for a second. But it was faultless. For this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. And this is actually from the Old Testament. He says, I'm going to put my laws in their mind and write them on their hearts. I will be to them a God. They will be my people. What does that sound like? For one, by the way, laws here is not specific to the Mosaic law. He's just saying my laws, my commandments. The Mosaic law people will take every time the word law is used and apply it to the Mosaic law in the scriptures. That's how they make their arguments. But the word in Greek here for law, nomos, is not specific to the Mosaic law. It's just like our word law. In what sense would we ever use the word law to always refer to, I don't know, the unspoken law of the Swahili tribe in Africa? It doesn't make any sense. The word law is general. It's not necessarily always the Mosaic law. In the same way, this is God saying, I'm going to put my laws, my commandments into their hearts, in their minds, and I will be to them a God. They will be my people. It's going to be more like, what it sounds like is, then I will just be with you. You will listen to me, and you will understand my commandments, and you will do right. And that's what it's talking about. In that he says, a new covenant he has made the first old. Now that which decays and waxes old is ready to, what? It's ready to vanish. So here he specifically references the old covenant, the old law, and says it's going to vanish in short order. Of course, the short order we know of is that in 70 AD it vanished. It was therefore necessary the patterns of things in heaven should be purified with these, meaning bulls, rams, the blood of animals. But the heavenly things are not purified with the blood. They were purified with better sacrifices than these. And in that, he's talking about the sacrifice of yourself before God, the purity of that and the fact that Christ is your high priest, that all supersedes the law and always did. But now that law is vanished. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Christ, it says, is not entered into holy places that were made with human hands. He didn't go into the temple. The temple, he says here, are figures or patterns or shadows of the true things in heaven. And then he mentions heaven, but Christ went into heaven to appear in God's presence for us. He's our high priest. That's the real Holy of Holies near the throne of God. So the Mosaic law was always just patterns of the reality of God. Patterns given to the Israelites so they would know how to behave, they would know what sin is, they would know all these things, and that was done away with by Christ. It vanished away. So, in general, to summarize, without going any further, no, we do not have to obey the Mosaic law. No, we do not. No Jew, saved or unsaved, has to obey the Mosaic law. I would encourage Messianic Jews to consider this teaching. I would encourage them to accept that Christ is the new agreement, the new covenant, the new way by which we gain closeness with God, the new way they do. I never obeyed the Mosaic law. I was never given the Mosaic law. I'm a Gentile. It was never even given to me. So why would I as a Gentile do it? But even a Messianic Jew needs to understand that everything in the Torah was a pointer to what he was going to do, to Christ and to the first century and the judgment, but not just the judgment. He judged wicked Israel, but the remnant of Israel was given all the promises of the Old Testament. And that was the finality of the law. The law and the prophets, the law and the prophets. He summed it all up. He fulfilled it. He put a nice bow on it. And the temple's gone because there doesn't need to be one. The real temple's in heaven with God and Christ. So I would encourage Messianic Jews not to necessarily give up everything. No, because some of the feasts and the practices, I think, because they are literal representations of Christ, I don't see why for a Jewish family it's not important to maybe hold on to some of those practices, but to recognize that's about Jesus Christ now. No, it's more of a remembrance than an actual practice for holiness like it was in the Mosaic law. To me, I can see that. I don't even really have a problem with Christians who do some of the practices of the Mosaic law, some of the feasts, some of the interesting little things that they all pointed to Christ. So that's kind of cool. But I don't think those things should be relied upon any longer by any group on earth, by anyone. They shouldn't be relied on as the method for holiness or salvation, and it's not required. You're not required to do those things. So that would be my response, Northbound Believer. If you do get a chance to listen to this, that's my response to the question of whether or not Messianic Jews should follow Torah. And my answer would be no, not as a method to holiness or righteousness or a required practice, but only if they want to do some of the feasts or practices as a remembrance of what Christ did. I don't have any problem with that. Not that I matter. I'm just saying what I think about that. Lindsay Ball, I see what you're saying. They aren't even Jews. I don't know. My jury's out a little bit on that, Lindsay. My jury's a little bit out. I don't know for sure if I know or have an opinion on whether the actual nation of Jews from the first century survived 70 AD and all the other judgment stuff that happened at that time. I've wondered about that. Like, well, God, if you were going to judge all of Israel at that time, really judge them, take care of the remnant who loved you and punish the wicked, Were they all gone? Was that the end of the Jewish nation, of all of the Jews? There's no real record that that's true. In the writings from the first century, historical Roman writings and Christian writings all talk about the Jews still existing at that time. So I've had a hard time deciding that I don't believe all that and pretending like that doesn't exist, and believing that the Jewish nation was snuffed out in 70 AD. I don't believe that at this point. And it's because of those writings that all talk about Jews from the first century onward. There were Jews still at that time. And all the different bad things they did after the temple was destroyed by changing Hebrew scriptures and all this other stupid stuff. The Jews that were left over were apparently not good either. But Pittsburgh Joe, you say you can stump any Hebrew roots guy by asking them if Jesus is God. They have no idea he was Christ before his advent. They only will obey the Father's commands, not Jesus. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point, Pittsburgh Joe. Like, it does feel like a real emphasis on Torah, so much so that you almost ignore what Christ did. Like, if Torah is still in effect, why did Christ come? That's another way you can kind of think about it, that it kind of devalues what Christ did. If you think Torah is still in effect for you and you must obey it, then why did Christ come? I don't, that's a hard one for me. That's a hard one for me when I look at that perspective too. But anyway. Whew. All right, guys. I think we've hit time and gone just a little past it. I think this is a great session. Some good topics. Again, I hope I didn't offend anyone with anything that we've done. I kind of had prepared topics this week. Let me see. Was there anything else that I didn't talk about? No, this is all we wanted to get done. Pittsburgh Joe, we kind of talked about your Greek. Your ask about the word advocate, the paraclete in Greek. Yeah, I hope I did that justice, but I'll look back through the chat and see if there's anything additional there. But thank you guys for all that you bring to the channel, your discussion, your comments. They sure spur me on. They give me a lot to think about. I appreciate it, and I hope that I've given you a lot to think about. I hope that some of the stuff, even if we disagree, at least gets the gears turning, and we think more, we talk more, we research more. That's really the point here, I think. Because, God, we want to be closer to you. That's all we can say, I think, is the way to do it. Pittsburgh Joe, I hear you on that. I'll check it out. So thank you guys so much for your time and attendance. Have a great week. And again, I would encourage you all to keep each other in your prayers. And I just appreciate each and every one of you. So God bless.